Piyush Goyal of the BJP, Kamal Faruqui of the Samajwadi Party, Vinod Mehta, Editorial Chairman of Outlook, Aryama Sundaram, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, and Jitendra Bhargava, former Executive Director of Air India. Let me come to you, Mr. Bhargava. First, you see the Prime Minister's clarification that has come out within 24 hours of the Times Now report. Do you think the PMO can claim it has not done a U-turn in this?
You see, whether PM is involved or not, let's put it this way. The deal is not in national interest. And because it is not in national interest, it needs to be looked into and accountability.
But how is it in national interest on the 22nd of April and not in the national interest on the 13th of June?
Look, people like us who have been in the industry have been saying this from day one, even prior to the
Do you feel there's been a U-turn? Do you feel the PM has done a U-turn? Let's take away the question of whether or not there is merit in a U-turn.
Well, if it's a belated realization, welcome it. And if it can be put on hold, so that the damage that this deal will cause on the aviation sector can be taken care of. You can't allow this deal to go ahead in its present shape.
Well, what about the damage to the image of the country that does a deal one day and goes back on the other? Piyush Goyal, where do you stand?
Arnab, I think the bigger picture that needs to be understood is this government has completely sold out to crony capitalism. Every single action of this government smacks of favoritism. And I think the airline industry very clearly is an example where at the cost of the national carrier, Air India and Indian Airlines, for which there are many stories galore, your channel and many newspapers have written about it. I think this is the last straw on the camel's back. They have finally demonstrated why Air India and Indian Airlines have been allowed to rot and come to this pass. Employees of those airlines have been telling us stories about what's happening. This bilateral agreement made barely 24 hours before the Jet-Etihad deal.
Yes.
And you saw the numbers. That airline has been making a loss for the last 5 years. That airline made a loss of 1,250 crores last year, 750 crores in the year ended March 13. So 2,000 crores only in 2 years. And then the share price went up from 340 to 560. And Etihad pays a 32% premium to the share price on that day.
Why are they doing so?
Exactly.
Because of the sweetheart deal?
Because of the sweetheart deal,
well, in that case,
of a government led by a prime minister who doesn't know what to decide. He must have got orders from some other person.
Here's the question.
To probably allow those seats to be given away.
You're making an allegation. You don't know who, so you can't say that.
I don't know who, but I'm wondering why the prime minister who chooses to catapult one day, say something, another day after your report, say something else. Is somebody else running this government and not the Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister is at pains today. I would just like to say this, that we have the whole PMO response here and had a zillion messages, not all of them very polite, from the Prime Minister's office, where the Prime Minister's office says your reporting is unfair. The fact of the matter is this: almost everything which is there in this response of the Prime Minister's office today was reported in the statement of the PMO that we reported yesterday. So with the greatest of respect to the press advisors of the Prime Minister's office, the fact is this: today you can almost do a cut and paste job between what we put out as far as the PMO note was concerned and the clarification today. How is the Prime Minister's office looking in all of this, Vinod Mehta?
Well, Arnab, it's quite clear what is happening and what is going on, but I find that the most interesting person in this is the Civil Aviation Minister. He seems to be publicly taunting the Prime Minister by going on repeating that it's too late now, you have already okayed the deal and it wouldn't have gone so far without your okay.
Yes.
Now, if the Prime Minister's office is saying that they just were interested in the deal and it's not been okayed, then they should say so. But if the deal has been okayed, you don't okay a deal and then examine it later. You examine it first and then okay the deal. In this case, precisely the opposite was done. The deal was okayed and then various people started mounting objections, and it's clearly a deal which stinks. I mean, you don't have to be a civil aviation expert to see that it's a deal that stinks.
In that case,
Until
I want to...
Today, no one in the country knows who exactly owns Jet Airways, except 51% is owned by Mr. Naresh Goyal. Who owns the rest of Jet Airways? This is an old story.
No, my question is therefore to Kamal Faruqui. My question is to Kamal Faruqui. Because Mr. Faruqui, I am told that you are supportive of the Prime Minister, you are almost supportive of the government in this. You are saying if the Prime Minister has done a re-evaluation of his position, it must be appreciated. Sir, I thought Mulayam Singh Yadav said the responsibility of saving the country is on the Samajwadi Party. Does your silence on issues like this amount to saving the country? Is this how you're planning to save the country, or just because you have the Damocles sword of the CBI over you, has the government silenced the Samajwadi Party?
Absolutely. This is all. No, Arnab, it's all bullish. We don't buy it of whatever is being said about CBI and our pressures and whatnot. But frankly speaking, what Vinod Bhai is saying is absolutely correct. That there are that dichotomy in the whole thing. And look at the attitude of the Honorable Minister itself. It speaks volume when he says that nothing could be done without the approval of Prime Minister. So it means directly he is challenging the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister is saying that it will be revalued. So basically there are two issues. One is the security, which I already talked about in the morning, and second is that such an important deal, how it can go without the approval of the Prime Minister.
No, but that's what I don't understand, Mr. Faruqui. You are an experienced politician and so is Piyush Goyal. Please tell me a situation. I am told the Prime Minister is against the deal one day. He was for the deal initially, then he became against the deal, and then Ajit Singh was pushing the deal.
This is how this Prime Minister has behaved in the last 8 years. He decides to give coal through an auction process, then overturns that decision and then delays it for 8 years and gives out coal mines to his favorite few. He decides that Raja is guilty and not I. One day he says it was compulsion of coalition politics. Another day he says, no, there's nothing wrong. The finance minister has approved it, which was a post facto approval after 6 months. Here also the Prime Minister says, I can do no wrong. The wrong is done by the ministers.
Is it the first time that ministers are beginning to throw their way to the Prime Minister? May I ask you today, just, you'll say you're balancing it out, but I'm going to say this, that I remember the proposed BSNL-MTNL merger in 2002 by Pramod Mahajan, who was Communications Minister, which had to be reviewed by Arun Shourie and went into cold storage. Did Pramod Mahajan at that point of time consult the Prime Minister? Isn't that exactly what is happening here with Ajit Singh and the Prime Minister?
I was not in government, Arnab, but by the way, a review is not the same thing. A review of a decision is not this, and it was not a decision that was done already. It was only a review. Here the seats are allocated within, the entitlements are given within hours. On 22nd April, the entitlement is given.
Yes.
The seats are allotted.
The government says...
The finance minister goes to the Prime Minister and says, we have decided this. Go ahead. We want to give it 40,000 seats.
The government says you're mixing up the two
things.
Does
Abu Dhabi have 40,000 passengers a week to send or bring?
The government says you're mixing up two things. The Prime Minister's office says there is nothing.
Well, he forced the issue to be decided on that day. He forced the ministers to meet and decide
my question to
within hours.
My question to Aryama Sundaram is this. Mr. Aryama Sundaram, you've handled many corporate cases. What the government is saying is that its decision to have this sweetheart deal with the UAE has nothing to do with the Jet-Etihad deal. They are saying these are two distinctly different matters being reported in the media.
By coincidence within 24 hours.
Huh? By
coincidence within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Gives you a 32% premium.
Yeah.
Am I being asked a question?
And the same Etihad.
Yes, you are.
And the same Etihad was not willing to give even 1,700 crores 2 months before this deal.
So my question to Aryama Sundaram, yes, you are being asked the question, sir. To you, Mr. Sundaram, is you buy that argument of the PMO that, look here, we were only clearing a bilateral agreement with the UAE. What happened between Jet-Etihad within 2 hours of that or 3 hours of that is not our business.
Your question is whether I buy that argument. I think I've been a lawyer too long to be completely naive. And I don't believe even when I started my career I was that naive to buy something like that. There are two things which you have to consider here, Arnab. Number one, the deal itself, as to whether it's a good deal, whether it's not a good deal, whether FDI should be permitted in civil aviation, etc. That's a totally different issue.
I agree.
The more worrying factor is the way this whole thing has been gone about. The way the whole thing has been gone about. We have had stonewalling from the PMO and now it's becoming a habit. We've had stonewalling every time a scam came up. There was stonewalling from the PMO saying PMO had no idea about it. Afterwards, it comes out that PMO could have had an idea about it. And then it keeps getting dragged on that way. But the whole idea appears to be to shield the PMO. Now, in the beginning, it was being done with scams. The 2G policy, the PMO was well aware of the 2G change in policy. We have the Colgate issue. We have so many issues. But successfully, the Prime Minister has remained the head of perhaps the most corrupt government this country has ever had in its political history. And the reason of that success is the shielding of the PMO every time a controversy comes up. So this is just playing according to plan. You go through with something, then you find there's a lot of opposition. The deal doesn't smell that sweet. It seems to stink in various places. Now here's a chance that the PMO, and therefore the PM is going to come up with some criticism on him, and therefore you backtrack and you snowball and you block him.
Well, that's what is happening in this case. I agree with you. But the question here is that allies of the government, like the Samajwadi Party, you see the problem with the Samajwadi Party, Mr. Faruqui, don't mind it, because your position before you joined the government and after you joined the government are completely different. You are effectively with the government. You spoke about corruption and scams, you took a position on issues, but today I find somewhere, Mr. Faruqui, that is, you've softened a lot as far as critical issues of corruption and governance are concerned. May I ask you why?
Absolutely.
Isn't that to your long-term disadvantage?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have not joined the government at all, and we are only supporting it from outside. And as far as the softening of on any issue, whether it is a coal or whether it is any other or whether it is FDI, we have been opposing it, and we have been opposing it tooth and nail outside also, in the parliament also. Even on this count, you must please understand that even in the morning we have said that this is smacks of lot of not only the security issues, but also the kind of working in the parliament, in the Prime Minister's office and the Civil Aviation office, and this has come through by while you are showing Mr. Ajit Singh's interview. So it speaks volumes of the whole thing, and PM office has to answer to the nation, in fact, what is happening in the government. Why Finance Minister is speaking a different voice, Ajit Singh ji is speaking a different voice, and Prime Minister's office is speaking a different voice. It's a very, very serious issue.
But as far as Mr. Ajit Singh is concerned, he almost challenging the Prime Minister. He's almost critically challenging the Prime Minister in this case.
Same Raja's argument.
Arnab, not
Raja
only
always said that I kept the Prime Minister in the loop
he is saying
on
that
everything.
the PMO was aware of this and approved it.
Yes, precisely.
And approved it. He is coming straight out and saying, please take the responsibility for once.
Yes.
Each time the PMO is aware, each time this has happened for the last 8 years, but every time there's a controversy, suddenly the PMO was not aware, the Prime Minister had no idea. I asked myself, either the Prime Minister did know, the PMO did know, or the Prime Minister doesn't know what is happening in the government. I don't know which I fear more.
No, I think the Prime Minister's office is only playing for semantics. Because the Prime Minister's office, the first sentence in their press release says, that there have been media reports on the India-UAE bilateral agreement and Jet-Etihad deal. Some of these reports have inferred that the PMO is playing a role in the Jet-Etihad proposal. I say that is completely wrong. The media and Times Now have not said the PMO has played a role in the Jet-Etihad proposal. The media and Times Now have only said, Mr. Jitendra Bhargava, we have only said that the Prime Minister's office had one position on the deal on the 22nd of April and had a completely different position a week later.
Why are you not saying the deal itself also has problems?
Yeah, I'm coming to it.
Well, certainly, but I'm not getting into how Jet and Etihad want to have a deal.
Not that. The fact that 40,000 seats were given out. In the history of India in 50 years, they've never given out 40,000 seats.
But what's the bigger question?
Today, Mr. Ajit Singh gave the statistics on TV, on your channel.
No, but the bigger
question...
There
were never 40,000 seats given out in one day.
The bigger question is this. Does the Prime Minister of India have consistency on an issue such as this? The question is that of consistency.
Can we keep this correspondence aside and look at the proposal first? Let's put it this way. There is a deal signed between Etihad and Jet under FDI rules, nothing wrong about it. But when you bring in the might and the financial and the national interest by way of seats added to facilitate this agreement, which means you support a private enterprise, it assumes that
the government says we don't know about it. No, I'm playing devil's advocate with you.
No, hold it.
Devil's advocate with you.
Hold it. I'm only simplifying it. And the very fact that this was done within hours of each other, there is a lot of merit in it. Now the question comes in.
Can I ask a question in context of 2G? You see, you had all the example of Swan and the other companies. What did the government say at that point of time? Government said, we don't know if that equity is being sold. One second. They said two things. I find two similar. Yeah. First, they said, we are not bothered if the equity is being sold by Unitech for this amount, etc. We are not involved in that. That's a private transaction. In this case too, one second, similarity. What does the government say? The government says the deal of the bilateral air services and the equity stake proposal are two different things. The equity stake proposal between Jet and Etihad is a private agreement between two private companies. So in other words, the Prime Minister office says, don't ask us. If that deal ends up compromising anything.
Again,